What's up, YouTubers? Just making a short video on expats and credit. I just want to start off with kind of a short story. One of my expat friends in Central America, it's kind of a horror story, but not completely. If you've lived in the United States or the Western world for a tremendous amount of time, you realize how important a credit history is for renting a house or buying a house or buying or renting an apartment, including to getting a good job, banking, all that stuff. If you don't have good credit, you'll have a hard time reintegrating back into society if you don't have or maintain your credit when you leave the United States. Here's what happened to him. Went to college, got his degree, went outside the U.S., started to earn a living, closed all his bank accounts before he left. That kind of surprised me. One of the advantages to keeping a bank account open in the U.S., or a couple of them, is you get PayPal with it. You can have clients pay you almost anywhere in the world. Now I know PayPal isn't the best, or even many people I realize most people don't even like PayPal. It can be a pain in the neck, but it's used by most people around the world to send and receive money, and it's very, very convenient now. Anyways, what happened to my friend was he went back to the States. He found out his credit was zip nothing. He didn't, like I said, he didn't even have a bank account. So when he went back, renting an apartment was very, very tough because he didn't have credit. And as a professional, I guess if you don't have a good credit score, it can hinder you from getting a good paying job. I'm not sure about that. I didn't go to college, so I don't know. But going through the whole process of not having really good credit and not being able to buy a home right off the bat or very easily, or rent an apartment for the transition into buying a home, was very unhelpful for him. So I just want to point out, if you're an expat or you're wanting to be an expat and you're leaving the country, and you have good credit, I would suggest you maintain it, because not only is credit in US dollars rare for most of the world. What I mean by that is, if you have good credit in the US, you can borrow at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% interest. If your credit is not so great or just average, you can borrow at 15 to 20%. Most of the world can't borrow in US dollars at those low rates. Now, you might not believe me, or you might think I'm crazy, but in some parts of Europe, Latin America, and Asia, you'll be borrowing at 50 to 100% in the local currency. And if you can get credit in dollars, it still will be at 30 to 50%. Now, when I say 30 to 50%, I'm not including all the charges they can charge you if you pay late or can't pay or whatever. And then in a few countries, the Philippines being one of them, and some Middle Eastern countries, if you borrow locally, usually you can't leave the country until you've paid off all your debts. So just keep that in mind. If you're borrowing in certain countries, you can't leave the country. Like, example, some people borrowed money in the last economic crisis in some Middle Eastern countries, mortgages as a matter of fact, and they weren't allowed to leave the country till they paid those off in full. Some Asian countries can be like that too. Anyways, if you don't have very good credit, I suggest getting a secured card. Capital One has a pretty good one, and if you can afford it, put it as big amount of deposit as you can. That's what a secured card is. You're just borrowing your own money, and the higher the amount you can put on your card, the better it'll be for your credit in the future. Like, if you can put $1,500 to $2,000 down, it'll show you as having a credit line at the other credit agencies at that 1,500 to 2,000, or even 5 or 10,000. The problem with having a $200 or $300 credit line, which they'll give you if you only deposit $200 or $300, it looks kind of cheesy. Speaking of $200 or $300 credit limits, in a lot of part of the world, in Latin America especially, that's all you're given, and the most you're ever given is about 2,000 or 2,500. So having a U.S. credit card, there's many benefits. One of which I just said, you can borrow in dollars. And when the dollar is weakening against stronger currencies, you can earn money in a stronger currency and pay your credit card off in a weaker currency. So you can play that arbitrage. We tend to have the lower interest rates, not always in the world, but right now in some other Western countries, you can borrow at low interest rates in your own local currency. And then, like I said, keep your other assets or your earnings in stronger currencies to play that arbitrage. Another benefit is, at least as an American, we have a lot, maybe not a lot, but we have some more benefits than other countries, especially in the Western world. Anyways, one of those benefits is if someone commits fraud on your card, you only usually have to pay $50 towards it. And why I mention that is other countries just, people can take your money or commit fraud on your account and you're still responsible. Even in some European countries, that's the case, although that's changing more and more. But in Latin America and Asia, typically if someone commits fraud on your card, it's very, very difficult to get that money back. Not impossible, just very difficult. So if you have a local US dollar card, uh, I happened to me, I had 3,500 if I remember right, charged, and I got the money back in about 2 hours. They said about 5 days, but it was 2 hours. And it's just a phone call, and I did it all online. It wasn't really a phone call, but you could just log in and do it all online. That's what I did. Another benefit of having credit is, at least for me, I can do everything online. I can pay off the card online. I can take my bank account and pay it off, pay my credit. And what I suggest you do if you want to maintain your credit, but you don't really borrow money a lot, is borrow small amounts that you can easily afford to pay off and pay them off in a 90-day fashion. So divide by 3 and then pay it off in the third month. It doesn't really give you any extra increase in your credit rating paying longer, but as long as you pay in 90 days, that's pretty good. But if you want, you can afford it, and you can afford to pay the interest. 3 to 6 months is a good range. That will help build up your credit if you occasionally, from time to time, borrow a third or whatever your credit limit is and pay it off in 90 days or longer. Just make sure you can afford to pay it back and you don't get in over your head. The reason I say all this is because if you're in a really I use credit cards as a hedge sometimes. If you're in a situation where you don't have any money, and you have a high credit limit, I mean, you don't even really have to have that high, but like just an example, if you have $2,500 to $3,000 credit limit on at least one card, you can fly home from anywhere in the world. Another way you can use as a hedge is, say you're coming back to America and you need some capital to start over, but you don't have any savings left. You can, borrow, get a cash advance, buy a used car, get an apartment or rent a room really cheap, and then get to work really fast. Just as an example, I just came back from Central America from the States, and I got a job in about 2 weeks. And I don't plan to stay here that long, but just to have some runaround money, I just got a kind of a part-time job at a temp agency, and at least in the Phoenix area, it's really not hard to get a job right now. So that's all. What I want to say, mostly what I want to say about credit is have it, maintain it if you have it. So when you come back to the States, you can rent an apartment, rent a car. That's another benefit of a credit card. Nowadays, you have to have a credit card to rent a car almost anywhere in the world. But the main benefit, though, is you can borrow in dollars. You can borrow in dollars cheap compared to other countries, and it's a good backup plan if you have your money stolen, you run out of money, or you need money to start all over, or you can even use it to start your business, but I don't really recommend it. But anyways, those are some of the benefits of maintaining your credit. And as an expat, I still think you need it, and it can be very beneficial to have extra funds when you need it, when you're in an emergency situation, and things like that. So anyways, that's all I have to say. Like, share, subscribe. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment if you have a different opinion on the subject. Thank you.